Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
There's no crying in baseball!
To infinity and beyond!
Iron Man.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Film Code. My name is Phoenix Clouden, and we are back. Fourth season, Film Code, and things are going to be a little bit different from here on out. If you don't know, there is a strike going on in the industry of Hollywood. The writers are on strike, and the actors are on strike. So the WGA and the Screen Actors Guild are both on strike right now. They have laid out specific rules about how people are to go about focusing and commenting on new content from struck studios. It's a little bit muddy. Some people say it's okay, some people say it's not. We're not sure, but it felt a little icky to just keep going as normal. So, in honor of what would have been Barbenheimer week, and we are so sad to not talk about Barbie and Oppenheimer, but we came up with a great solution, and that is that we are still going to talk about a Greta Gerwig film and a Christopher Nolan film, and in that we bring you, instead of Barbenheimer, Women Stellar.
StellarWomen, Phoenix.
StellarWomen. There we go. StellarWomen.
Here we go.
So we are talking Little Women and Interstellar. One excellent Greta Gerwig film, and one is, spoiler alert, excellent Christopher Nolan film. So I am so excited that we get to talk about these films, and so excited who is joining us today. Of course, returning as always with the man with the greatest hair known to the world, Zach Sneed. Zach, how are you, sir?
Phoenix, I'm doing fantastic. I just watched Little Women yesterday. I actually hadn't seen it, so I'm excited to talk about it. And Interstellar I've seen before, and I'm excited to talk about both films. It'll be interesting to compare the two.
Yeah.
So I'm ready to do that.
And we are so excited to welcome our first guest of season 4. But you know him because he's been on quite a few times, and that's because we love him, and he's awesome, and he always brings a great show with him. You know him from NostalgiaCast. I know him as the man who killed Full Metal Jacket, and I will never forgive him. Welcome back, Darin Lundberg. Darin, how are you, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm never going to live that down, am I?
Never.
That's all right. That's all right. And then we've talked many times. It's like watching the movie again. It rose a little bit. So maybe if we had that time to do it, I would have changed my mind. But anyway, yeah, it's good to be back. I always love joining you guys. I think I didn't mention this before we started recording, but it's like usually when I come on, I'm like, oh, it's so great to. But like with us, it's like we just started talking. It's like it's just the natural, normal thing by now. So I appreciate the invite back, even though we aren't able to talk about the movies that we initially were supposed to talk about.
Yes, we'll discuss that offline afterwards. But we got a great substitution because, like I said, Greta Gerwig, solo director of 3 films, Lady Bird, Little Women, and Barbie, is 3 for 3 in my opinion. And then you have Christopher Nolan, who has done about 11 or 12 films now, somewhere around there. And I've seen about 8, and he's 8 for 8 in my book. So, like, 2 very incredible directors who have delivered exceptional work in pretty much everything they've done. We didn't settle this, but where are we starting? Little Women or Interstellar? Which one do you guys want to go with?
You might as well do ladies first, I think.
That works. Okie doke. Little Women
right.
especially is fresh on Zach's mind, so alright.
I'm working on a novel. It is a story of my life and my sister's.
Make it short and spicy. And if the main character is a girl, make sure she's married by the end.
Ow, Joe!
I want to be an artist in Rome and be the best painter in the world. That's what you want too, isn't it, Joe? To be a famous writer? Yes, but it sounds so crass when she says it.
My girls have a way of getting into mischief.
Well, so do I. This is Meg, Amy, Beth, and Joe.
I intend to make my own way in the world.
No one makes their own way, least of all a woman. You'll need to marry well.
But you are not married, aren't you?
Well, that's because I'm rich.
Joe, would you like to dance with me?
I can't because I scorched my dress. And Meg told me to keep still so no one would see it.
I have an idea of how we can manage.
Joe is a lost cause. So you are your family's hope now.
I believe we have some power over who we love. It isn't something that just happens to a person.
I think the poets might disagree.
We can leave right now. I'll sell stories. Joe. And you should be an actress and you should have a life on the stage.
Just because my dreams are different than yours doesn't mean they're unimportant.
I have loved you ever since I've known you, Joe. I couldn't help it.
It would be a disaster if we
It
married.
wouldn't be a disaster.
Okay? We'd be miserable.
Joe, I'd be a perfect saint.
I can't.
A new play written by Miss Jo March.
Women, they have minds and they have souls as well as just hearts.
I want to be great or nothing.
And they've got ambition and they've got talent as well as just beauty. And I'm so sick of people saying that love is just all a woman is fit for. I'm so sick of it.
There are some natures too lofty to bend.
So, who does she marry?
So Little Women stars Saoirse Ronan, Florence Pugh, Emma Watson, Beth Scanlon, and I'm forgetting who plays the mom.
Laura Dern.
Laura Dern, yes, thank you. Yeah. And Meryl Streep also has a slight cameo in this, and Timothée Chalamet, of course, we must have Timothy, and Bob Odenkirk has a small role in this as well. So, this is the fourth, I believe, adaptation of Little Women. It's the Louise May Alcott.
I think it's 7. I think they've got 7, actually.
7? Jesus. So some of those must be like TV movies or something.
Yeah, I don't want to. I'm not trying to Will Axley you on your own podcast, but you've got
you're good. No, you're good.
I had it written down. You have two silent movies that were made in 1917, 1918. You have one, the Cooker version, was made in 1933 with Katharine Hepburn. I have that one. 1949 had Elizabeth Taylor gently, and then you have the 1994. You had with Gillian Armstrong, the Winona Ryder, and then there was a 2018 that was like a Christian. Low budget or independent version, and then you have this one. I only know that because watching Little Women for the first time, like before I sat down to watch it a few years ago, I was like, "What? Why are we doing another Little Women? Like, what's the point?" You know what I mean? It's already been done. So that's the only reason I know that there's that many.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I only knew about like the 4 major motion ones, like the 39, the 40, and the 94 ones, and then this one, and. Even I was like, is there anything new here? Like, number one, it's based on the Louise May Alcott novel, which was written, 1914 or something? like
1912? 1868.
Something ridiculously old, right? And I'm like, so the source material is over 2,000 years old. And now, we've done 7 adaptations, and we're doing another one. And I remember thinking, I distinctly remember when I went and saw this in theaters, and probably for the first half hour, my brain was just like, why are we doing this? Really? Seriously, what is the point? And it took me maybe about 30 minutes in before I was like, this is excellent. Oh my God, I'm so glad we have this movie. And I don't know, Darin, if you've seen the previous versions, but this was the first time I had seen any version of the Little Women story. So for me, I'm a little bit biased, probably recency bias, but is this not the best version of it, or is there some difference in the others?
I think they all have their merits. I've only seen the 33 one, obviously, and I've seen the 94 one, which is very, very charming, very, very good. But they're mostly just straightforward adaptations of the book, which is fine. And you have the acting, because I think the thing is, even though, like you said, it's 2,000 years old, it's a universal story, and it works. Like every time they do it, it's you latch onto the characters, you latch onto the arcs. It's just very, like I said, it's universal, so it works. I just think that this, and it blew my mind, and we'll talk about it. It's like, why hasn't anybody joined the two timelines like this and overlapped them? Because it just brings out so much more meaning. And I was like, whoa, like, why have we gone like all these, like over a century? Maybe not. Yeah, over a century. 150 something years, and nobody's tried this before. So I think the way that Gerwig did it, and it's the same thing. Like, I like Lady Bird, and so walking into I only saw this because, she was an interesting director, and she had a good first feature, solo feature, and so that's why I watched this one. But yeah, it's like some of the things that she does are just, why hasn't anybody done this? So I would actually agree. I love the modern feel of this movie, and I think out of all the ones I've seen, this is the one that I enjoy, and I've seen the most. This is my 4th time watching it.
Nice.
Yeah, so.
Zach, you saw this for the very first time.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of periodicals usually. They're not my favorite movies to watch. So going into this before I even could watch it and just seeing what it was, I was like, oh, I hope this is good. Like, because some of them have a very dialogue-driven movie doesn't have a lot of surprises in the movie, and that's fine, but because some of them are told in Old English, I was worried that this would kind of be that way, and I'm just not personally a huge fan of those kind of movies. But I loved it because this was something you could follow. It wasn't any Old English. It's okay, what are we talking about? Because sometimes for me that bores me, and I'm okay, we get it. You live in the past. I get it.
Yeah.
So it was nice. It was refreshing to see a movie like this with the costume design and everything have, like you guys said, a modern twist, and it was just excellent. I mean, the acting was so on point. It's just a stacked cast, and it was amazing. I didn't realize until I started watching. I was like, oh wow, that's Florence Pugh. Oh wow, that's Timothée Chalamet.
Right.
Oh wow, they have a lot of people in here. And Emma Watson, and so after getting in, kind of like you said, the first 15-30 minutes of it, I was yeah, I'm in, I'm invested in this movie. So it was awesome. I loved every second of it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. I distinctly remember, and I think I wrote this in my review once I came out of it, that I had said right off the bat, I was so engrossed in the idea of I don't understand why we're doing this, that it was really kind of just bogging me down and distracting me. And yeah, literally right when it got to the 30-minute mark, and I think what Darin pointed out is the crisscrossing of the timelines. That just brought such an interesting element to this story that I was oh, I see what we're going for here. You know what I'm saying? It's a very straightforward novel about these 4 sisters and this time period and whatnot. But the way the story is told and the way that it's executed is so nice. And I remember when I came out of the theater the first time, I was that was definitely one of the best movies of the year. I was it's a solid 4.5, no question about it, right? And then I rewatched it again at home, probably several months after the Oscars, and I remember and I was just like, wait a second, this is sublime. like this is really, really, really well done. You're talking about like just the concept, right? The concept to do it in a way like this, and the execution, brilliant. And you mentioned the costume design, Jacqueline Duran, who was the costume designer. I mean, expert level, I guess, is really like the only way I can describe it. Like, genuinely fantastic. I do believe she was nominated. I'm not sure if she won or not for the costume design, but just absolutely excellent. Yeah, I loved this movie. Like, genuinely loved this movie, and was very happy with how it went. And it did win for costume design, so yes.
Oh, good.
Good job, Jacqueline Duran.
Well, it's always strange. Like I've said this before on Twitter. It's like, why is it that the period dramas are always the ones nominated for costume? Because it's like all you're doing is you're taking stuff that you've seen before and you're just kind of changing. And then the stuff from the future stuff never gets nominated, which takes a lot more imagination because you're creating it from scratch. But I think like if you like costume design if you don't do a good job, that's not good. You know what I mean? It's like because you've got all this. Yeah, all this. But I think that they modernized the clothes enough that it felt. It didn't feel like stodgy and with a layer of like mold on it or something like that. You know what I mean? It felt very fresh, and it ties in with that modern feel of the actual movie.
Yeah, and the cinematography in this movie is amazing. Like, there's certain shots where, like, especially like the wide landscape shots, where I was just like, come on, man. like I don't remember who was the cinematographer on this. Probably someone excellent.
Looking at it, I think his name is Yorick Lesseau. I think he's a French cinematographer, but yeah, great.
Well, I mean, he's got a great sensibility. Then, because that definitely came through in just the styles, the way that it's shot. Like, no other Little Women, and I've seen like clips of each one of these. No other Little Women version has made me go, oh, I have to see that, just based on how it looks. This is the first one where I was like, just based on how it looks, I gotta see that. And I think she did an amazing job. And like, before this movie, my only reference, and this is sad, my only reference for Little Women was an episode of Friends.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's like an episode where Joey is reading the novel and Rachel has already read it, and she's like, look, there's a moment where you're gonna have to put the book in the freezer. And I was just like, what? Like, why would you put the what? And in the movie, it's because Beth gets sick, and you want to keep her, safe for a while, so he puts the book in the freezer. And like, I remember the scene because he's like he's reading it and he's sad, and she's like, Beth just got sick, didn't she? He's like, yeah. He's like, you want to put the book in the freezer? He's like, yeah. So, like,
doesn't he make her read The Shining because she hadn't read it before, so they were like swapping? Yeah, it's great.
And I was just like, bro, that's so funny. So like, when it got to that point, I was like, oh, so this is why he was upset. And I was like, okay. But I'm like, and I love Beth Scanlon. Like, Beth Scanlon is such an incredibly talented actress, and she's been in a bunch of stuff that I like, probably low, like, indie stuff that I don't know if a lot of people have seen, but she's such an talented actress. And, I came into this and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna love Saoirse Ronan. Like, I'm gonna love Saoirse Ronan. I'm gonna love Timothée Chalamet. Those are gonna be the top two for me. And it ended up being Florence Pugh and Beth Scanlon.
You gonna Eliza Scanlon?
Sorry, Eliza Scanlon. Yeah, so her name is Beth in the book. Oh, Jesus.
Like the movie itself, you're melding reality with.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, Eliza Scanlon. Sorry. I got to redo this whole thing. Welcome to Film Code. Oh man. So yes, Eliza Scanlon. But yeah, those two ended up being my favorite characters in this movie. Because they each have very, very impactful scenes that really kind of spoke to me. Zach, you off camera you mentioned this movie also got to you emotionally. What did it for you?
Yeah, definitely Beth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you mean Eliza? Her, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, Eliza, but Beth in the movie is what got me. Yes. So, yeah, I think that really got to me because, well, I just got done seeing my sisters for a week in Orlando and spending time with them.
Nice.
They flew in from London, so I took them to Universal.
That's awesome.
And I have a sister who's like 12 years younger than me, and so she's like my child basically to me, like because she's so much younger. So that got to me really emotionally because I just got done seeing my sisters and then knowing like what it's like to like imagining losing your sibling like that, your sister, someone you love, especially Joe so much older, like that like hit home for me, and I was like, oh my god, like I was like a puddle, like I was like, no, Beth can't die. And I knew, I was like, as soon as she, you know, because they cut back to when she had scarlet fever, and then this time she's sick. So this time she was sick, I was like, she's not going to be at the table, is she? And then I thought, I was like, yeah, she's not at the table.
Oh man, yeah, like
yeah.
This is one of those movies where I'm so glad that I go to the movies by myself. Like, 'cause, yeah, like the first time when she like recovers and Joe sees her at the table, and I'm like, if you could put like a speaker up to my heart, you would have heard how much it swelled. You know what I'm saying? It would have literally been like a Hans Zimmer score. You'd been like, wow, like this dude is putting it out there. Like I was so happy. And then later, when we think the same thing's gonna happen, I was like, like you know, oh, it tore me up. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm so glad I was by myself. Because I would have been like, that would have been an embarrassing first date. Let me just put it like that.
Yeah, so that's what definitely hit home for me. And then I thought it was I love that they bring up in the beginning the storyline of how Joe basically turns down Laurie's proposal, and you're like, oh, what happened? And then you like kind of go through and see what happened. I love how they did that. So you're like wondering the whole time, okay, when, like, where in here does it all like go wrong? Because the contrast they use in the color in the scenes like are so different. Like the past is so bright and cheery, and then when you come back to present day, it's dark. Like the way that they did the cinematography, like it's gray, it's dark, it's bleak. Like, so you're like, okay, what went wrong for this to happen? Like, so I like that they kind of go back and forth, like you guys are saying, and keep you like on your toes. Like, okay, where's it all fall apart? So, yeah.
It's interesting if you read the, I think it's either the commentary, excuse me, or something like that, or they did an interview with Gerwig where she's talking about the whole point of like mixing the timelines. Like she said that, so in a movie, it kind of blew my mind. In a movie, when you see a couple together, like when you see, because you know that, well, spoilers obviously, when Joe and Laurie don't end up together, if you see them together at the very first, and then all of a sudden they introduce different characters that end up being their love interests, it's kind of jarring, because that's not what the language of the story and the visuals are telling you. So when you see Amy with Laurie first, and then you see Joe with Professor Bear first, that's setting you up for it. It's your brain kind of eases into that a lot easier. So, they're ending up together. It feels natural, as opposed to, where did this other stupid character come from that's interrupting my romance, right? My, the story that I wrote in my canon, right? So it's interesting. Again, this whole thing, the way that she just melds these timelines, it just gives you a whole new perspective of this movie that I'm like, why did it take this many years for somebody to come to this conclusion of things, right?
This many
especially
adaptations.
with Beth being sick and with her dying, if you have that in the way that the book is written, it's like, oh, she's sick, and then she gets sick again, and so it's just weird. But having them overlap each other was so interesting, and just like you said, Zach, how she matches the exact same camera shots, except the only thing that's different is the color scheme. Instead of it being orange and warm, now it's cold and blue. So when she comes downstairs and she just finds Marmee just sobbing, it's like it breaks your heart because you've seen just barely the happiness of her coming through that, right? It's just one of, I have notes of all these ways that they juxtapose things. It's like, wow, like, why hasn't anybody thought of this before? Why is it this? And that's what's so great about this movie and so great about Gerwig's mind, is that she knows that this is the iteration of this story. And she knows, how am I going to make this resonate with people that already know this story by heart? And that's what makes this feel, I think, so fresh and so new. And obviously I want to talk about a lot more of those things, but yeah, just that whole thing with Beth, I don't know, I like that. It's just so well done and so well put together.
I distinctly remember, and I know that we know Twitter is a cesspool, but I distinctly remember sorry, Twitter X or Twitter X,
yeah,
whatever it's called now.
Whatever.
But I distinctly remember when this movie was having its awards run, and the biggest complaint on there was the color grading. Like people who just couldn't understand the color grading and why the colors. I was like, is this a real complaint? like I was genuine. I'm like, I know there are some brain dead takes on Twitter, but my God, like I was seriously like, are y'all serious? Like, you really, like you don't understand? You can't, like they were, the complaint was that they couldn't tell the past from the present. I was like,
I think they did. Wow. Every year they release like an article, they interview like an Oscar voter or an Oscar member about what they think about the nominations. And I think the one that they interviewed for Little Women, he was like, I couldn't make sense of the two timelines. Like, it was hard to follow. And I'm like, first of all, we know that X is X now is going to be the new cesspool. But do you guys think it has to do with the fact that this is directed by a woman, from a novel by a woman, about women? And that's why some viewers watch this and they're just blinded to things. Like, if it was a male director about male characters, it would have been easier for them to follow. I just don't understand this.
I don't know the logic behind it, because it was to me, it was just the most idiotic complaint I'd ever heard. And I'm like,
I'm not watching the movie,
right? I'm sitting over here because I'm like, I could follow it, and mind you, I have not watched a single version of the Little Women Other Stories. I've not read the book. I knew nothing about this story, so I'm like outside of a Friends episode. So I'm like, I don't know how y'all couldn't follow this simply. And like, normally, I go see a movie. If I love it, I go see a movie about 2-3 times, right? This I literally only saw once, and I was like, you couldn't follow this? What's wrong, guys? Like, something's wrong with your brains here. So yeah, it bothered me because I think that ultimately hurt the movie's chances at a number of Oscars. Granted, I think this came out in 2019, so it had a rough year. like you want to talk about probably the best year ever for every movie that came out. This was going to have an uphill battle no matter what, because it was contending with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Joker and The Irishman and a bunch of other stuff where it was like, okay, yeah, it's gonna be tough, but it was still, I think, one of the best movies of the year. But yeah, that complaint just always bothered me. I just didn't understand where the confusion was.
Well, the problem with it too is you're limiting yourself. I think the problem with a lot of people, especially on Twitter, is you have to. Yeah, I'm a dude. right? I didn't have sisters growing up like Zach or, So, but you have to be able to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else. I don't understand this idea that I can't identify with these people because they're not me, right? That's not, I don't want to go watch a movie about me. I know me. Like, I want to see other experiences. You know what I mean? So I don't understand this idea of, I can't put myself in the shoes of these women and this experience. It's like, well, you should at least have an understanding or an empathy for what they're going through. Like, why are you closing yourself off from and it's so stupid that I'm saying this in 2023. Like, we're still struggling with stuff like that. But yeah, it's like, I go to see movies. Like, one of the arguments for the movie one of the movies we were going to talk about was like, I understand that nuclear war is terrible. Like, what is this teaching me? And I'm like, what are you watching the movie for? Like, how would you not, you know what I mean? So it's like, when you limit yourself to what I really loved about the color scheme, and I don't know if you guys, for me anyway, this is what I thought, is, so the past is all rosy and orange and warm, the present is all cold, and the way that the book is written, it was originally split, I think, into 2 volumes, and the first volume is Little Women, and the second volume that she wrote later is called Good Wives, where it's like takes the opposite perspective of what happens after they get married, because I think that second volume or second part opens with Meg getting married. And so it's kind of like, Into the Woods kind of did that. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie or that play, where it has, like, the first half is all the fairy tale stuff and it's all great, and then the second half, it all takes that and turns it to shit. And then it awakens your mind, but for Into the Woods, it's like, why are we doing this? Like, the fairy tales are, like, it doesn't have, I don't need that perspective of, life isn't hunky-dory, that's not what I read a fairy tale for. But I like that Alcott wrote this as, here's the rosy stuff, but here's the reality of what you actually have to go through when you're an adult, once you've left all the childhood stuff behind, right? But what I really picked up on is when the movie ends with, and again, jumping forward, with Jo watching her book get made, and then it cuts to the warm color scheme of their life now, of them walking through the fields, and she's married to Bear, and you see Laurie and Amy with kids. Why is that shot in the warm glow, right? That's not the past. And to me, I thought that, she's writing this from a perspective of that's her past, right? So she's writing it kind of as a fairy tale. But then you have the warm fairy tale color scheme of that ending. I personally don't take that ending of the everybody happily married. I don't take that as the real ending. I take that as what she imagines, or the book.
Where the book ends. Yeah.
Right, and so just the way the color scheme is all of a sudden switches, and you're like, but you don't notice that, because when you're watching it as a regular lizard brain, you're just kind of like, that's nice, the happy ending, I got what I deserved. And it's like, well, her getting her book is the ending, and I think the happy stuff is just what she rewrote to appease the publisher, right, Dashwood. And so it's just an interesting, that's what takes the movie, for me, for anything else, from this is a great adaptation to maybe masterpiece level, because it's making you rethink everything that you've watched. I don't like using that word, because I don't think masterpiece is something you can apply to something in maybe like 10 years, because you have to gauge how it impacted everything. But yeah, like this movie is on a different level from the color scheme and from the writing. And that's what I'm talking about. When you limit yourself and you don't see the different color schemes, you're closing yourself off from a lot of joys that this movie has, and that's what's frustrating for something like this.
Excellent, yeah, well said. I agree with all that. I do want to point out some specific scenes though that really just I think of every time I think of this movie. What's her name? Oh God, Florence Pugh's character. What's her name? Amy. When Amy burns Joe's story, I was like, my blood boiled, bro. Like, I was like, I mean, I get it. I get like that sibling jealousy, that sibling rivalry, where you're like, you have something that I want, or yada yada, or we're so similar that it makes us like hate each other. But like, she did the most unimaginably hurtful thing, and like, then you see in the next scene when like Joe's devastated, like she realizes like, okay, yeah, that was too far. Like that's something that is so deeply personal to her. Like, for you to do that, like that's that's not cool. But then that gets compounded by when Amy's trying to skate with Joe and Lori, and she ends up falling in the ice. And I'm like, I know, like, me personally, as a writer too, like, I was like, I know, like, how devastated I would be if someone burned my stories. But if I also saw my sister fall in the ice, I'm like, no, like, you don't do that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, save my sister. Like, that has to happen. So, like, those two scenes really, I always think of, because they're just so impactful on how I think how we see, like, human relationships, and especially among siblings, especially if you're, like, close in age. But the other scene is, of course, Amy's monologue, where she talks about marriage. And that is the scene, I believe wholeheartedly, is the scene that earned Florence Pugh her Oscar nomination. Because it's amazing. And she, like, details, like, and especially because this story takes place in, the 1800s or something like that? Somewhere around that time. So, like, everything she's saying about marriage at that time is true. And I thought that was just hard-hitting and beautiful, and really spits in the face of what a lot of people deem of romance when it comes to marriage. It's like, no, marriage is a proposition. like, it is a business contract, essentially. And at that time, you could argue women got really the shit end of that contract. Women got the shit end of a lot of stuff. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It got a little bit better, but, like, yeah, like, for the most part, they get the shit end of that contract, which I think is interesting. And I thought it was just a great juxtaposition, especially because you have a movie in 2019 talking about marriage that was set in the 1800s, and you still see that some of those things are still kind of there and still similar.
Yeah, well, sorry to keep drowning Zach out. But that was one of the things. It's like, this is so, it's told the same, you know, marriage is an economic proposition is what she says, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like a lot of these limits that are put on women or people of color or LGBTQ, all these things, everybody's always going to have limits put on them. Stuff that they're allowed to do, stuff that they're not allowed to do, which is not fair. It's like, everybody's human. You should just be able to do, you know, that kind of thing. And it's so sad that idea still applies today. Like, we've learned our lesson. We've let women, you know, from back then, we've let them do a lot more things and have them, like, own things and have them have a lot more responsibility. But now we're also limiting different people. So we've learned one lesson, but we keep applying that stupid same shitty lesson to other people. Like, what? Like, yeah. I don't. And that's another thing. That's why I think this movie is universal, because those themes still play so strong today. You just have to be able to see yourself in these, in these Little Women. You have to be able to see yourself in these characters, and it still applies to you, even though you don't look like that or sound like that. You know what I mean? It's I don't know. It's so sad that we're still having this conversation today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and going back to your point, Phoenix, about the siblings and Amy burning the book. So for me, I kind of sided with Amy a little bit. I'm a little, you know me, Phoenix. I like things a little darker. So, you know, when she's burning the book, I'm like, yeah, burn the book. And then she got upset after, and I was like, yeah, I'd probably do the same thing.
I missed it during your Dead Reckoning conversation. Zach, was there a point where you said you thought Tom Cruise needed to die?
No. All
right.
No, there is not.
I thought it was in the whole episode, but I wasn't sure. Anyway.
No, that was Top Gun Maverick.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I wanted Tom Cruise to die in that movie.
That's right. I remember now. Oh yeah. The funny thing too about watching The Sisters is I was watching. My wife had seen it before, but we were watching it with my daughter who'd seen it for the first time. But and he doesn't have any sisters, so I looked over to Elizabeth and I said, "Is this how you're?" Because when the sisters are all getting along, it's so great because it feels like they're a unit, and it feels like you get to know each of those characters because of how they are together and their bond together. It's weird. Again, tying it in with Mission Impossible, I feel like you learn more about Ethan Hunt by his interactions with other people. And it's the same thing with this one. Like, they feel like a unit. They're part of each other. So, again, when they lose Beth, it's like losing a limb, or it's losing a part of themselves, right? But when I asked Elizabeth, I'm like, this fun that they're having together and the way that they kind of punch each other and, all the mischief they get, is that something that you and your sisters went through? And she's like, no, not really. And then when they were fighting, she was like, yeah, that's more like me. It wasn't my sister. So it's still very universal, and there's a lot of things to, identify with in there. So,
yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, her burning the pages, Phoenix, I was like you. I was like, no. Let's go. But I also see, like, she's young. She's petulant. I wrote here, like, Florence Pugh is so fun playing petulant and sniveling and immature. You know what I mean? I thought that was fun.
And that's such a great point, because, like, yeah, we get that contrast. And, like, again, she earned her Oscar nomination.
Yeah.
Because she played young and immature and petulant, and then you get this mature and vivacious and, like, self-aware woman towards the end, and it's like, oh, it's music. like it's so well done. And, like, the scene when Laurie confesses, his love for Amy, and she breaks down and she's like, no, like, don't tell me you want me now when I've wanted you my whole life. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like such a brilliant display of maturity and immaturity all in one performance. I love Florence Pugh. So I'm sorry. But yeah, I thought she did incredible here. And yeah, those are the two that stand out to me is Eliza and Florence Pugh. I just think they did such a fantastic job with what they were given.
All the performances in this are so. I'm going to mention Saoirse. Is that Saoirse Ronan, right?
Saoirse, yeah.
She's otherworldly.
Yes.
Like the way she just does she has certain tics or a certain way that she looks at each other or a cock of her head, and it's like she's got a chemistry with the camera that's unreal, right? And she's just so natural. And I don't know, was she nominated? Did she get a nomination for this? Okay,
yeah,
good. Good. And Pugh's great. And then Emma Watson did a fine job. I just don't think she had as much of a showy role. Like, she had more of she's great.
She was more of like a plot-driven role.
Yeah, but she played it well. And then you obviously had Eliza, who's just the quiet kind of grace. And so you feel it too when something's lost, right? Again, something's lost because you feel it from the other sisters. You feel it from the mom. Laura Dern does a great job. Chris Cooper has just... I don't know if it was because of the way... But I just kept feeling that Chris Cooper was... Even though I've read the book and seen the other... It's like... In movies today, people are going to expect that character to turn out to be some kind of creep, right? But he doesn't. Like, I love that he just sees something in Beth, and it's so... When she's playing the piano and he comes and he sits down on the stairs, and you're like, he can just... There's a presence in that house that he's feeling that he hasn't felt in I don't know how long, and Beth brings that to him. And at the end, when Beth dies and Joe has that conversation with him outside, it's like, oh man, he's just lost his daughter all over again. Like, how heartbreaking is that for him? And he's a part of that family, and they bond. And so yeah, Chris Cooper's great. Odenkirk shows up, he's great. Like, it's just Meryl Streep. I like the scene where it's any scene where it's Ronan and Streep together. I'm like, this is like an act off. You got these two great actresses who are just in a scene together, and then later you put Pugh in with her, and there's just a grace. You're in with Meryl Streep, and you're handling yourself that well. It's just that takes a lot of power for yourself as an actress, I think.
Yeah.
So they all do great. This movie is one of the notes I had is like, I don't know how, but Gerwig is striking a perfect tone and a perfect balance for every scene in here. It's just so perfectly pitched. There is never a wrong note in this movie, and that is incredible for me. And I think it has to do with the fact that it's a female director. Like, I don't know if a male director would have gotten a lot of the stuff and had the attention paid to certain character tics or story beats or things like that Gerwig has.
I think that's easy, hands down, because, I mean, yeah, no question about it. Gerwig is probably the reason... No, sorry. Is undoubtedly the reason why this movie is as good as it is. Because, yeah, the female director of it all, absolutely. And it comes through in every scene, in the way that it's written, in the way that it's styled, in the way that it's shown. It is the feminine touch, and I think the others were also done by women. Maybe not all of them, but there is something distinct about Gerwig's style that really comes through, and it's been true for all of her movies. That she has a unique style that definitely brims forth in what she does.
It's strange they have only this one and the last one. I don't know about the independent one because I haven't bothered looking it out. But like the first few were just made by men. Again, it's weird that you have a story about women, and Coukers was like known as a women's director. Like if he made women's pictures, right? So he knows and did a good job. But like, yeah, it's weird that just these last two major ones have been directed by females.
I was gonna say I also like the part where Frederick plays the piano and they have that touching moment as a family, like all gathered around when he goes to play it too. I thought that was super cool. Where they're like, "Yeah, please play it." Yeah, like we want to hear the piano.
I forgot about the piano scene, dude. I had totally forgotten about that.
We know that that's real too because it takes place in the cold blue color scheme, right?
Yeah.
He brings some warmth to that cold palette, I think.
I totally forgotten about that scene. Yeah. All right. We got to move on. So, final ratings. Zach, what did you give Little Women?
I gave it 5 stars out of 5.
I'm riding at 5 stars. Absolutely with you. I love this movie. Darin, what did you think?
Well, again, I think we talked before about I can't just give 5 automatically to something, but having seen this 4 times, having it settled for maybe 4 years, I can't find a fault in it. Why would I give it lower than a 5, right? I just think it's just, and we talked about, the last thing I want to mention is the cinematography, and yeah, it's got great shots, right? But again, every period movie is going to be able to do that. Like, you're not like doing anything different that hasn't been done before. What I really liked is the way that the cinematography again is used to juxtapose the past and the present. There's a shot of Amy when she's recovered from the lake, and then it cuts to a shot of Beth in bed from the opposite angle to kind of come back. There's a shot where Amy is talking with Aunt Marge, and she walks out of the room, and then it cuts and it shows her walking into the room to kind of juxtapose. So that cinematography, and I like those little juxtapose. So other than the gorgeous shots, I like that it also had these little intimate kind of cinematography moments. And again, that's Gerwig kind of approving that, and that's why it has to be a 5. I can't give it lower. I don't have any problems with it, and it feels very modern. It feels very justified. And yeah, this I think people didn't see this movie because they thought, oh, this is whatever the up-teamed iteration of this movie. But this makes it, every choice in here makes it a worthwhile redo of this story.
Something else that made me up my 4.5 from it is the second time I watched it with my sister. And my sister is not a big movie person. She's not a big movie buff. You know what I'm saying? A lot of stuff will go over her head. And by the end of it, she was like, I love that movie. Like, she really, really loved it. So, like, for me, if you have a movie that grabs someone that's not even, a part of this world, I think you've done something truly exceptional. So yeah, I think 5 stars is perfectly fitting for this movie.
Yeah.
Alright. So we talked about cinematography and costume design with Little Women. Now let's shift to talking about some acting, some editing, and some damn good score as we talk about Interstellar.
A little late, Coop.
Yeah, we had a flash.
It's an Indian surveillance drone. Solar cells power an entire farm.
What'd you do, Murph?
She didn't do nothing.
Murphy's Law. You're a well-educated man, Coop, and a trained pilot.
And an engineer.
The world doesn't need any more engineers. We didn't run out of planes and television sets. We ran out of food.
Dad, why did you name me after something that's bad?
Oh, we didn't.
Murphy's Law.
Murphy's Law doesn't mean that something bad will happen. It means that whatever can happen will happen.
We must confront the reality that nothing in our solar system can help us.
Now you need to tell me what your plan is to save the world.
We're not meant to save the world. We're meant to leave it. And this is the mission we were trained for.
I've got kids, Professor.
Get out there and save them.
I have no idea when you're coming back.
I'm coming back.
We must reach far beyond our own lifespans. We must think not as individuals, but as a species. We must confront the reality of interstellar travel.
Murph, I love you. Forever. I'm coming back.
Darin, when we discussed that these were going to be the movies that we talked about, you had mentioned that you were little warm on Interstellar. Probably not your favorite Nolan movie. Why is that?
Well, I don't want to. First of all, I don't understand the Nolan hate. It seems like, I don't know if you know who Jeff Gordon is, but I call it the Jeff Gordon syndrome, where he became this great NASCAR driver that came out of nowhere. Everybody loved him, and then there was a certain point where it was like, okay, dude, you're too popular now. We hate you. And they turned on him, and it was like, that's weird, man. Fandom is just strange. And I think it's the same with Nolan. I think everybody was so in his corner, especially after Dark Knight, especially after Inception. And then there was just a moment, maybe it was The Dark Knight Rises, where people were like, oh yeah, this guy sucks. Like, what? We hate this guy. Like, what and so he's like, guys, yeah. So I'm not a hater like that. I think that every filmmaker is going to have a dud in his filmography. There's no filmmaker who's untouchable. So I'm not that guy that's going to be like, oh, Christopher Nolan is untouchable. I'm not that guy that's going to be like, oh, Christopher Nolan sucks. I think Nolan is the filmmaker right now that takes these grand, metaphysical, kind of poetic stories and gives them to you in blockbuster form. And even though he's not perfect at it, guys, you got to shut up about that stuff, because he's like Ronan is. He's otherworldly about his direction, that he's able to bring you these things. No other director is giving you scope like Nolan is, right? On a level that you're able to identify with as a human being, right? I think he's great at that, even though he's not So with Interstellar, the ambition of it, the special effects of it, which we'll talk about, the score of it, some of the emotions in it. Again, I don't understand why people say Nolan is an emotionless director, because there's a part in this movie where I was sobbing in the theater. But this is also the movie where when Anne Hathaway is giving her monologue about love, and I was literally in the theater, I think I checked out for a good 20 minutes. So I'm like, what the hell is she talking about? Like, what is this? I think it went the opposite way. Like, Nolan was like being accused of being emotionless, and so he added this monologue that was like, it had the complete opposite effect, where it was like, whoa, dude, like, why are you shoving sugar down my mouth? Like, I can't. And you compare it with the scene I was talking about, where you have McConaughey just sobbing because he's missed decades of his kid's life, and that is done without him saying, I can't believe I missed decades of your life, and this is terrible. He doesn't say that, he just shows you it, as opposed to, love can be seen, love can be molded. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what is this? In a movie that's about metaphysics and is so good at showing you things. So, and again, I this is not the weakest Nolan movie. I think the one he made before Oppenheimer is the weakest one in my book, but I just think that this is the first one where I was like, okay, maybe you're not that great, but you're so good at the ambition. I just think that part is a little bit silly. I don't know. That's the only thing. I didn't mean to say that this movie is terrible, because a lot of it is great. I just think that on this grand scale, having that one monologue, it really kind of took me out of the movie for a little bit.
Oh, man. Yeah, Zach, what about you? What did you think of Interstellar?
So I've only seen it once. It has been a while since I've seen it. but I do remember most of it, I would like to say. I've just seen so many movies since then, but I really did enjoy it. When I was watching it, I thought it was really well done. There was a lot of twists and turns I was not expecting. I was not expecting the ending. I don't think anyone does with that film. So I really enjoyed it. I really like Matthew McConaughey in that movie. I think he did a fantastic job. And then Jessica Chastain as Murph, I thought did really well too. So, yeah.
Yeah, so Interstellar, you talk about an ambitious concept. Like, I mean, Nolan is a, I wouldn't quite say he's a master at ambitious concept, but he's like the one guy who's just like, I'm just gonna go for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't really matter. He's like, I'm just going for it. And like, to me, Interstellar was the one where I was like, probably the whole way through, I was just like, how is he gonna pull this off? You know what I'm saying? like, because it's so out there. I was just like, I don't understand exactly how he's gonna draw this whole thing together. Because I mean, you're talking about this father who's going on this expedition, and you know, it ends up costing him pretty much his entire life and his entire time with his daughter. And he goes into space, and he goes to places that, you know, we've never heard of, and experiences things we've never even thought were possible. And it's such a unique and out there and ambitious concept. It's so large that you think, like, how do you solve this in a 2-hour, 20-minute movie? And yes, you have that very weird, very straightforward monologue that kind of does some of the heavy lifting, I guess. But to me, it is the emotion of this movie. Like, to me, I'm gonna be in the minority. I usually am, but this is my favorite Nolan movie. This is hands down my favorite Nolan movie. I just think the ambition and the emotion is all so satisfied in this movie. And then visually, it's probably his most resplendent film I think I've ever seen. There's some visuals to this movie. I don't care. He did some cool stuff in Tenet. Yeah, sure. He did some great stuff in his new movie, but here, I think there's some visuals in this that are stunning, that are breathtaking, that really contribute to the vastness of this film. And to me, that just spoke to me. So, on top of the visuals, on top of the score, on top of the emotionality, it all just worked in tandem for me with this movie.
That's... So it's not my favorite, but I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to say that this is a terrible choice for your number one, right? Because all movies are subjective and they're going to affect you in different ways, right? Mm-hmm. The ambition and the scope and the way that I think they mostly reserved the CGI for the black hole rendering stuff, which it's a space movie. You have to do that. The visuals, I think, stand visually as a movie. I think it stands on par with 2001, with Tarkovsky's Solaris, with Alien, with Star Wars. It creates this world, and that's the other thing. By not relying on CG and shooting on actual locations, even the water planet, I think they found a glacier run where they found an actual that was knee deep in water or something like that. So it feels not like a set. Nothing in this movie feels like a set. They built the farm, right? They built the actual ship, so they were the Endeavor or whatever that they're on feels like a flight simulator because it would move back and forth to give it that realism and help the performances, right? I think the scope of it. I think when there are visuals, like the part where Coop, because the whole movie they talk about how good of a pilot he is, and you don't really see that until the docking scene, right, where he's able to spin it, and that's visually, it was you kind of lift out of your seat when you watch stuff like that. And again, Nolan, when he can hit those highs, that's where he's, I think, masterful, because no other director, I think, is hitting those ethereal kind of feeling, visually resplendent moments, like I said, he's hitting those like nobody else. And so visually, I agree with you. It's just something else. And then obviously having I think Zimmer did an interview where Nolan talked to him and said, what if I were to give you a story, just a brief story, or write a paper and have you write a music score to it? How would you do that? And Zimmer said, well, give it to me. And so he gave him a story about fathers and sons and family. And Zimmer, I don't know the cue that he wrote, but he wrote a cue and came back and gave it to Nolan, and Nolan was like, well, now I have to make the movie. And Zimmer was like, well, no. What movie are you talking about? I don't even know. And so what Nolan did is he said, what you did is you gave me the heart of the movie. Now I know the heart, or where the center of this movie is supposed to come from. Because Zimmer wrote the theme as kind of an ode to his son. Right, and so that it informed the movie, and so the emotion is there, and definitely and a lot of it, except for that one part, I think that it really nails a lot of that stuff for me, right? And so I can't be the guy to tell you that you're wrong for having this as your top Nolan movie. I can't do that.
I love it. I truly love it, and like, part of it is this cast. Like, number one, I'm an Anne Hathaway, like, apologist, stan, whatever you want to call it. Like I've been in love with Anne Hathaway since The Princess Diaries. So, like, anything she does is gold in my eyes. So there's that. Matthew McConaughey, I've never really been a big fan of. Like, I saw Dallas Buyers Club, which he won the Oscar for. He was excellent. He was excellent in that. I thought he was even better here. And I thought he brought I'm a father, right? You know what I'm saying? So, like, I'm a father of a little girl. So the idea of being lost in space and not being able, and losing pretty much her entire life, just the thought of that, like, tears my heart out. Like, this is just the worst thing you could do to a parent. So I'm like, so maybe I'm biased, right, in that aspect. But, like, that's what kind of put this up for me, is just like, that would brutally devastate me. So, but on top of that, killer visuals and a killer score. Hans Zimmer, man, like, oh my God, masterful. Absolutely masterful.
McConaughey's never been. I'm with you. I wasn't a fan of him maybe until Dallas Buyers Club or this movie, because I think he just had one note that he played other than Rain of Fire. He just had, I'm the good looking Southern guy. I'm gonna talk like this, and you're gonna love me no matter what. And it's like, you're not performing, like, you're just your persona, right? And I think sitting down with this, I don't know if it's Nolan, because I felt the same way about DiCaprio. I thought DiCaprio was very childish and boyish, and Inception was the first movie where I was like, oh, he's a man. Like, I can see him, like, he's become something else, right? And McConaughey's the same way. He's thinking, and he's living Coop, and he is this person, and he's just, I don't know, his performance is on a different level than anything I'd seen before, because he's just the thinking man. You can see him processing things, and you can see him, like I said, living that character and existing as Coop, as opposed to just delivering lines, a dialogue delivery system, right? So I don't know if it's Nolan kind of inspiring people to give these great performances, but they have to tie in together, I think. And then I'm with you too. It's like Anne Hathaway, Ella Enchanted, I've never finished, because there's a certain point, because I'm not engaging in that movie, where I'm like, all I'm doing is I'm staring at Anne Hathaway because she looks like that. And when I watched it with my wife the first time, I'm like, I can't finish this because I'm just gawking at her, and I don't feel right. Like sitting here with you, I don't feel right doing that. But then, she comes back, and I think what broke me was like Get Smart, where I thought she was a funny comedic actress, and I'm like, she can be attractive and she can be a good actress. That sounds reductive, especially after the movie we just talked about. But she's great. Like, she brings her A game to everything, and I appreciate that. And then you've obviously got your stalwarts like John Lithgow or
Ellen Burstyn.
Ellen Burstyn in here. Casey Affleck shows up in here. Chastain, Zach, like you talked about, she's just great. It's not Tobey Maguire, who's Topher Grace shows up and has a good role. And so the performances, they're not to be faulted either. So
There's one moment in the beginning of the movie that I have to talk about, which, again, as a parent, just brought me so much joy and laughter. And it's when he goes to her school for like a parent-teacher conference.
I'm already smiling. I know what you're talking about.
Right, and like they're like trying to tell her like, oh, what she did wrong or why it was like that. He's like, yeah, I'm a astronaut. Like that's not wrong. And like they're like, sorry, we don't teach us like that. And like so he comes out, she's like, how'd it go? He goes, I got you suspended. Like, yeah, that's me as dad. Like purely, like nah.
Don't tamp down my daughter's greatness. You don't
exactly. Like, what are you thinking? Get up out of here. No, like, So, again, just so many things I love about this movie.
Well, you could see him seething when they're telling the moon landings never happened. I'm like, what? Like, what's happening? Like, this is me. And so you can just see him. And when he goes, like, you need to punish her. And he's like, well, this is what I think I'm going to do. She's in a baseball phase. There's a baseball game where there's going to be popcorn and treats. I think I'm going to do that. It's so great. But then, the whole first section of Interstellar is what sells you on that emotion. It's the grounded stuff. And then when he leaves her, right, and they don't get to say their proper goodbye, and he's just crying as you see them, and then it just does the countdown, and then it cuts to, them in space. It becomes, and then you have to readjust because, there's the metaphysics. I think Kip Thorne, who's the advisor, was like, we can't do anything Hollywood. This needs to be as realistic as possible. And so it takes your brain because you don't have that attachment to the science of what's happening. And so you kind of have to readjust and but then it sells you on it. It convinces you of it by the end. Where you're on an ice planet with Matt Damon and you feel like you're on an ice planet with Matt Damon. It doesn't feel like processed at all. And that, again, man, even though this isn't my top Nolan, how hard is it to sell that verisimilitude of the feeling of actually being there? How hard is it to sell that? And it's because of all these tricks that Nolan has in his bag that's doing that, right? And just like you said, Phoenix, the part that broke me was when they're on the water planet and they get back up and they're like, how long were we down there? And he's I can't remember their other assistant's name, but he goes 23 years. And my heart sunk because there are days where sometimes I go a day without seeing my kids because I get home maybe at 7 o'clock and they're doing their own thing and then I'm in bed because I have to get ready for the next day and I don't see them. And that breaks my heart not seeing them for one day. How would it be 23 years? Just that one line of dialogue. And again, you don't need to sell it. You don't cut to a shot of McConaughey going, 23 years. That's a whole childhood. I miss baseball games. I miss romance. Like, they don't have to do that because you get it in just the one line. And when his son shows him, you're a granddad in the video, and it's like, when he breaks up, or the wife dies, or they separate, or whatever, his daughter-in-law, or whatever. You weren't there to help your son go through any of that? So, oh my gosh. when people say Nolan is emotionless, point them to that scene. Like, I don't understand that
point them
criticism.
just to this movie.
Yeah, I also like the twist when they get to the ice pan. They find out that the whole plan of them going up there was never the plan at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, when that part, like, when they revealed that part, I was, like, pissed for him. Like, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, he's wasted all these years missing out on things for something that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
What kills me, too, is, like, that scene, and this is just smart directing and just an incredible story. The scene where they're on that water planet, right? And I believe they're warned beforehand, like, hey, like even like I think they say like an hour here is like a year or something like that. And like we see them on the planet and they're doing their thing, and then they get ransacked or whatever, and it's like it's a 20-minute scene maybe, and so like. It's just the fact that scene there is so quick, and then the very next scene is like, yeah, you guys have been gone for 20 some odd years, and it's like, oh my god, like, it's such a smart and just vicious kind of contrast of what you lose, in that time. I do think it's interesting too. I don't think these two movies were meant to be similar, but they came out one right after another. So like Interstellar came out in 2014, and then right after that, Ridley Scott did The Martian. Which is another movie kind of about
another rescue Matt Damon movie.
Rescue, what I'm saying? And this guy who's stranded on I think he's on Mars or whatever. And there's time lost in that, and like he's on there for I think a couple of years, and they're in space for another couple of years, and it's just like it's a very interesting dynamic too. And The Martian got way more love than Interstellar, which I don't understand, but okay. Even though I love The Martian, I think that movie's great. But like, yeah, like it just was funny to me because I'm like, these are kind of similar movies, and they both kind of do the same thing. But like the emotionality is there. It's there in both films, but I think it is really there for Interstellar, and you get so much out of it. Again, like I said, I'm biased. I'm a parent of a daughter, so there's way more things that I attach to Interstellar for that. And I think
it was Phoenix. It was every hour is equivalent to 7 years.
Ouch.
And then also, if you tie in the music score, I think Zimmer said that, could you hear the tick like of a clock on the soundtrack? Every click that you hear equals 1 day on Earth. So every time you hear a click in the score, that's equal to 1 day.
Wow.
That is some intricate work, man.
I gotta go back just to rewatch that scene now.
I gotta listen to that. To the score again.
I gotta say too, like Phoenix, you said that you don't know why The Martian got higher praise than this. I think I know exactly why. I think because Interstellar is trying to tackle concepts that aren't easy. Mm-hmm. And The Martian is just what I was impressed about The Martian is just a very easy to watch movie. It's very entertaining. And it's just that entertainment. I don't know if it challenges you as much as Interstellar. And I think, again, people had their knives out for Nolan. It's like when you're trying to do these giant metaphysic ideas and metaphors and all this stuff, and these higher brain things, I think critics and audiences kind of reject that or rebel against that because they don't want to feel like they're being talked down to. I don't know. What I'm basically saying is that I think The Martian got higher praise because it's a much easier movie to watch. This movie requires a lot of emotional investment and some brain thought. I don't know. I think that really has a lot to do with why one was more popular than the other, or more revered than the other.
And just like I said, Nolan's ambition, like he really went for it when it came to just incredible like scope and the vastness of these concepts. And like you could argue like what's the phrase, shoot for the moon, even if you miss you'll land among the stars. Yeah. That's literally Interstellar. Like literally Interstellar. Like it may be a big brain concept, but there's so much good around it that hey, even if you miss, you're still in the good. And I think to me that's just excellent.
Wouldn't you guys rather have a movie that tries to do too much instead of tries to do too little?
Yeah.
Well, yes, tries to do too much and is still good at it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like sometimes some films they do too much and it's not, they don't have enough for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's like, yeah, I see what you're going for, but you didn't put enough into every aspect to make it all work.
Would that be like Moonfall for you, Phoenix?
Oh no. Moonfall is very much all that.
Well, no, but I'm saying they did try to cram a lot.
Yeah, they did.
That movie.
And so I guess that would fit it. Like they crammed a lot into it, and like there was not enough to make any of it work.
There's a difference between throwing everything but the kitchen sink filmmaking versus your ambition. Like it doesn't quite match your reach. There's a difference between that. And
I think the closest example to that would be Nolan himself with Tenet. You know what I'm saying? Tenet has a lot, very big brain concept, and you know, some would argue that there isn't enough for it to make it work. I personally like Tenet. It's not up there with like some of the best or strongest of Nolan, but yeah, I do think there is some stuff there. It is way more ambitious than what it accomplishes. That is true.
But this one has the thematics and the emotional grounding of it, because it's about human connection, right? That's why Coop goes into space, to save his family, to save the planet, basically to save the human race or whatever, keep it going. At the end, when he finally sees Murph again, and she's like, you know, I don't want you to be here. Like, a child should not live less. A parent should not outlive his child or their child, right? You need to go out there, and you've got a chance at a human connection. So go find Brandt, right? Go to her and find her and help. And that's juxtaposed with the stuff where they go, and because it's a man, they go to rescue him, and he's like, oh, none of this is inhabitable. Like, nobody's going to be able to live here. I just wanted to come and get rescued. And then that scene is juxtaposed with the Dr. Brandt, the elder Brandt, saying, oh, that wasn't the plan at all, right? So it's about, you know, man's inhumanity to man, in a way. I know Nolan connected this to Treasure of Sierra Madre, where it's like you're just trying to do self-preservation. But it's what Coop and Murph and Anne Hathaway, Brent, what they learn is it's not just about that. And yeah, I'm going to keep going back to it. I mean, her saying the love thing, it's putting into words what I get from the movie anyway. I don't need you to monologue for 2 minutes telling me what the point of the movie is, where I can see you doing that through your actions, right? And so it's the human connection that really, yeah, it's ambitious, but that's what grounds it and makes it more relatable. But again, like if your knives are going to be out, you're going to see flaws everywhere, and so you're not able to really meet the movie at its level. You're trying to make the movie meet it, come to your level instead of meeting in the middle. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
yeah, and yeah, I think it was just a weird time for his career, and this movie didn't get a fair shake, and it deserved one, because I personally, I'm always going to sing its praises. It's the one that really kind of spoke to me, for the obvious reasons. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. Final score for Interstellar. Zach, what do you got?
I gave Interstellar 5 stars.
Nice. Darin, what about you?
I'm sorry, Phoenix. I'm going to have to go 3.5 on this. It's just, I think it doesn't quite reach the levels of some other movies, and there are some parts that are really silly, but a lot of the ambition really works for me. A lot of the emotion really works for me. I can't quite give it a 4 because there are other Nolan movies that I like a little bit more than this, but that ambition is everything. The scope is everything, and the emotional parts that work are everything. The last 20 minutes or whatever from when he's saved from the Tesseract, and just I watched that ending over and over again because I think it's just perfect, just the way that it nails all its final things. But yeah, there are just some bumps in the middle that keep it from being a 4 for me. So it's not. I'm not saying it's bad. And that's a 3.5. I think is giving you what I think.
I like the scope of this movie is so wide and so vast. Like I can't even settle on anything less than 5 stars. I like the ambition is amazing. I think the visuals are stunning. The acting's incredible. Hans Zimmer is a legend. That score is insanely good. And yeah, I vibe with this movie entirely. And it is the only Nolan movie that has broken me, like shattered me to pieces. So like that right there, I can't escape from. So 5 stars solidly.
Can I ask you guys a question? Like, I've listened to enough of yours where I don't think this has ever happened, but have you ever had somebody give a rating and then say, I don't understand why you guys are giving it 5 stars? Like, you shouldn't be giving it that much. Have you had people that have done that? Okay, well, I think that's wrong. Like, what you guys saying that it's a 5-star movie, it's like, you're not going to get an argument from me. And Phoenix, then the way you're describing it is like, yeah, it's a 5-star in your book. Like, why wouldn't it be a 5-star in your book? You know what I mean? And the thing we haven't touched on is the Zimmer score playing on an organ. I think it was like the Harrison and Harrison organ in the Temple Church in London. It obviously,
that's
in a
why
church, you're in space, it's giving you you're closer to God, that kind of thing. It's like the heavens. And so having the organ play into that idea, you know, the 12 astronauts that went through the black hole the first time can be likened to the 12 apostles, you know, that kind of thing. It's got this otherworldly, I keep using that word, but it's got this extra level of, oh yeah, this is like a gospel movie in a way, right? But done in like a sci-fi perspective. And yeah, that's to be admired, man. Like, you give it 5 stars, like, but give it 1 star. I don't know. Like, I can't tell you how you're going to respond to a movie. And like we talked about, movies are very subjective, and I love that you guys, the movie affected you in that way.
I know it.
So I wanted to say that.
Yeah. All right. So pretty solid, like, between the two movies, Little Women and Interstellar. 5 stars across the board, 3.5, but it's basically a 5-star. So I think that when you're talking about Greta Gerwig and Christopher Nolan, right now I would argue 2 of our greatest auteurist directors working right now. So they've
especially
always
looking at the box office now, right? Their latest two, that proves it.
Yeah, they've always done stellar work, and it's impressive that they're still doing incredible work. So, that being said, we're going to move on now to What's Good. Darin, what have you watched? What would you recommend? What has been good for you, sir?
Watched a movie called Where the Crawdads Sing. Have you guys seen that?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And what I can, it's a coming of age story. It's based on a novel, all that. It's very pretty to look at. It's very sincere. It's got, great performances. The name of the actress in that. The main star.
God.
Daisy Edgar Jones. She does a great job.
Yes.
You've got David Strathairn's in there, Garrett Dillahunt's in there. It's a sincere movie. It's a very pretty movie, and so from that level, it's entertaining. I don't know if it's a full-on recommendation for me, though, because I feel like it was kind of inert dramatically. Because, okay, so it basically comes down to the scene where Strathairn is defending her in court, and you realize that the other side, their whole thing is, she took a necklace. The necklace was missing from this guy's neck, and so obviously she's the one that murdered him. Like, that's their whole case, really. And then the Strathairn character gets up and goes, his whole summation at the end is, come on, guys, we're being too hard on this girl. And then the jury's like, you're right. And that's what I mean by inert. It's like there's not really anything huge that happened. There's a lot of great character stuff. And then at the end, it turns out that she, spoilers for people, but it turns out that she is guilty, like the twist. And it doesn't really build to that. It's just, we're going to throw this into the last 5 minutes, like she really did this. I don't know. I just thought that it was very pretty to look at. It was very sincere. It was very well made. But at the end of the day, it didn't have a lasting impression, I think, because it didn't really... the ambition wasn't there enough. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I would definitely recommend it as it's not as bad. Like, it didn't... I don't think it got... Would it have like a 34% on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that? It's not that bad. So if you're going to want to watch a movie, put this on. It's like 2 hours and it's fine. Like, it'll, it does a lot of things, and my daughter enjoyed it, so that's why I recommend it. But yeah, Where the Crawdads Sing was the newest thing I saw this week.
Zach, what about you, man?
So for me, I watched a couple of the Studio Ghibli movies recently. I've never seen them before. So I'm going to recommend Spirited Away. I know it's like a classic, but yeah, I hadn't seen it personally, so maybe there's some of you out there who haven't, delved into like that world or like the anime kind of movies. So Spirited Away was definitely just beautiful and awesome to watch.
Nice.
Miyazaki's definitely, if you're not into anime, like, watch his stuff, and that's what anime can do. Right?
Yeah.
So
Miyazaki's the GOAT. So I finally, I can't believe that it took me this long to watch this movie. I'm kind of embarrassed, but I finally saw The Truman Show.
Oh, Phoenix.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still haven't seen it.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
Like,
we even did an episode on it on NostalgiaCast. So watch it and then listen to that episode.
Yeah.
Truman Show's awesome.
Yeah, Truman Show was great, but all I could think of afterwards is like, I would be furious. like I would be furious, and I would probably be hermetic, if not like, just suicidal. Like, because I'm like, everyone knows your face. Like, for 30 years, they've been watching your life, and your friends, your family, no one is real. It's the most disgusting, like, the most obscene, just abuse I think I've ever seen in a movie. Like, the gaslighting is on, like, over 9,000. Like, it's disgusting. So, like, yeah, I'm like, the movie itself, so good. Like, Jim Carrey has never, well, maybe he has, but that's definitely one of his better roles.
Yes.
And it's such a great concept and a great movie. But all I could think of is, I'd be sick. I'd be sick. I'm like, it's disgusting.
Zach, are we spoiling anything? Do you at least know what The Truman Show is?
Yeah,
we're not spoiling anything for you,
I
right?
had a friend who kind of gave me a synopsis of like what it is. So.
Okay.
Well, it gives away the whole premise in the trailer, and then you just kind of see how it plays out, which is great. But yeah, that movie, guys, like, when it came out, it predicted the whole. I think before The Real World came out, like that was The Truman Show. So it predicted basically everything, the reality TV boom, and it's. Oh my gosh. And instead of the reality TV nowadays, people are willingly going into that. Truman had no idea. Like, he's not. Yeah. And then what is he going to do?
Right.
You know what I mean? How is he going to...
Isn't it like live streaming, basically?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It predicted so many things.
Oh.
And it comments on so many things. And that... Phoenix, I'm glad you finally got this. You know, we all have these little blind spots. As long as you're able to come around and watch them, awesome. Like, don't watch these movies. That last line, so funny, and it's so emblematic, of the times today with Little Women. How people just don't get the point. Interstellar, like, too ambitious for its own good. It's like, what are you missing? I don't understand how you're missing these things. So yeah, great final line. Zach, get on that. Get on The Truman Show.
Absolutely,
I'll check it
definitely watch it. We got to cover it at some point. All right. So that's Truman Show for me, Spirited Away for Zach, and Where the Crawdads Sing for Darin. Let us know if you guys checked out any of those movies, and let us know what you think. All right, so now it is that time, finally. For the first time in season 4, we have our first code word of the season.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
You could change the movie,
It was my code word, and this is going to be so great to see if these guys can crack it. Your code word was sequel. Your movie took place between 1990 and 1995. Your supporting actor had a regular recurring role on a hit TV series in the 1980s. And your cast is almost entirely different from the first movie. So, Darin, you are our guest, and we love you. So you get the privilege of going first, and I'm so excited to see what you came up with. What do you have for the code word?
Well, I'm glad you still love me after our Interstellar conversation. Like 3.5. I'm glad I'm still in. Anyway, so again, I say this every time. Like, this is a shot in the dark, man. Like, I don't know. Like, this is the best I can come up with. And when I get them right, it's like, Okay, I guess I guessed right, but I'm going to go with, I'm going to build up to it. So it's a sequel. You're saying that the cast mostly doesn't match. You're saying that one of the supporting actors was in a hit TV show. We just talked about Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey was a mainstay of In Living Color, which is one of my favorite TV shows.
I love In Living Color.
His Fire Marshal Bill, or the Vera de Milo, or there's even an outtake because Damon Wayans played this bum. And the running gag was he'd take out a jar of pickles. It was supposed to be like a double, like he shits in a jar, right? But it's pickles, but you get the joke. And there's an outtake where it's Wayans and Carey trying to outgross each other, and Carey opens that jar of pickles and starts eating one of the pickles in character, and it's like, oh, it's so funny. And he was like the one white guy of that awesome cast, and he held his own, right? And so so In Living Color. And then, obviously, if you're talking a sequel, I'm going to go with Batman Forever because he was in that one. The cast is mostly the same, is mostly different, except for Michael Goff and Pat Hingle. Again, I'm going to go with that one. Batman.
All right. Beautiful guess. Beautiful guess. All right. Zach, don't be influenced by Darin. Make your own mind. What are you going with?
I actually went with Batman Returns. Which is 1992, so it fits the timeline. And it has Danny DeVito, who is in Taxi in a recurring role. He was on throughout the 80s. So I went with Batman Returns for my movie. And it made, like he said, it mainly has an all different cast from the movie before it, which is the original movie, Batman. Except for there's a few, I think, there's not many who return. So mine was Batman Returns.
Not many return for Batman Returns. That's fine. Isn't it crazy? Like our minds kind of go to the same place, but not really. That's what I love about these things, man. It's like you kind of see the different mindsets. I love these code words.
Oh man, I love these choices that you guys came up with. And they are fantastic.
But they're not
they are so close.
Oh, good.
But to be fair, I made this one difficult because I don't think anyone else has seen this movie but me. And it is a movie that I love too much. It is from 1991. Your actor who was in a TV show in the 1980s is Massage Taylor, who was in Designing Women. Your cast is completely different because originally you had Andrew McCarthy and Kim Cattrall, who was in this. So your movie is Mannequin 2 on the move.
Oh shit, man.
It is an awful movie, but it is literally one of my favorite movies of all time. I love that you guys, I love your choices. They are great.
I'm laughing so hard because nobody brings up Mannequin 2 on the Move. Whoa.
Never.
That's how deep this show goes. That's...
I've seen this movie so many times.
Oh my gosh.
It's an embarrassing amount of times, but
Is this Christy Swanson?
Christy Swanson, yes. They changed the entire cast. Christy Swanson, William Ragsdale, Harry Kaiser, Stuart Franken, who's a fantastic character actor who we never see much of, so he's fantastic. The only returning star was Massage Taylor, because he was in the first one. But yes, Mannequin 2.
It's the new MCU, the Mannequin Cinematic Universe. I don't know why they didn't come up with more of these.
They really should have done like 5 more of these movies.
You could do one from a girl from the Old West. You could do a girl from...
you could keep going. There's so many different ways to keep going in this.
Oh my god.
Do a chick from like 70s London. Like, it'd be fantastic.
Missed opportunity.
Missed opportunities. Mannequin 2, you heard it here on Film Code, probably for the first time in decades. But that was your code word, Mannequin 2. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. You will blame me, however, for the torture that I put you through for all 95 minutes. But it's fantastic. I love it. It is the cheesiest, corniest, terrible movie you've ever seen. I swear to God. But I love it to pieces. So, yeah, you should always know when it's my code word, just go crazy.
Yeah.
Just go crazy, guys. But there you have it. Mannequin 2 wins the day. And I'm on the board for season 4.
Wins.
Darin, thank you so much for joining us, man. I can't thank you enough. I love it every time. Let everybody know where they can find you, sir.
Again, I'm only on X or Twitter or whatever the hell they call it. I'll be on there until there's nobody left to interact with. Thank Kevin, you guys are still on there. So again, at NostalgiaCast. This season we're just finishing up as we record this, our 90s Palooza season. Again, Phoenix, which you were a part of. And that was a great conversation talking about Ghost.
Swayze!
Swayze! You're not waking anybody up this time. I like that. So, guys, seriously, I can't. Every conversation, it's like, oh, these are guys that I've been to high school with. I've known these guys since elementary. It's just what it feels like. So, thank you for having me on. I feel, as your season opener guest, I was like, oh, I'm getting kind of teary-eyed. Like, I love talking to these guys. So, thank you for bringing me on. Even though we weren't able to talk about the 2 movies that we were going to talk about, I think that the movies we talked about, again, wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
I love chatting with you guys, even though we're missing a guest. And I'll have to talk to him eventually. Yeah.
Zach, where can everybody find you, sir?
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Zach Sneath. That is ZachSneath. And you guys can find me on Letterboxd at ZSneaks. That is ZSneaks.
And as always, guys, you can find me on Twitter at I'mHOReviews1. That's the number 1. And on Letterboxd under PA Clouden. And as always, guys, please follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, and now on Threads at Film Code Pod. And we will see you guys next week. We are out of here. Peace.